Number 10. Namajunas is the number 4 ranked strawweight in the UFC. She is 24 years old and has 3 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. She last lost to Karolina Kowalkiewicz by a split decision. At UFC 201, she is a super talented strawweight who has the potential to become champion one day. She is very young in the sport and has plenty of time to develop her skills. I believe with another 2 or 3 solid wins, she will be ready to challenge for the title in 2017. Number 9. Juliana Pena is the number 4 ranked bantamweight in the UFC. She's 27 years old and has 4 wins and 1 loss in the UFC. She last lost to Valentina Shevchenko by submission via an armbar in the second round. At UFC on Fox 23, she has very high level grappling skills and has given her opponents a lot of trouble inside the octagon. She mainly relies on her grappling and her pressure to achieve the victory. I think with the win or 2, she'll be right back in title contention in 2017. Number 8. Clady Adela is the number 1 ranked strawweight in the UFC. She is 28 years old and has 3 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. She last defeated Courtney Casey by a unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night 100. She has already fought the current champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk twice and has lost to her both times. I believe her overall skill set will help her put together a winning streak and will eventually challenge for the title once again. She is a highly talented fighter who has the potential to hold the UFC strawweight title one day. Number 7. Michelle Waterson is the number 7th ranked strawweight in the UFC. She is 31 years old and has 2 wins and no losses in the UFC. She last defeated Paige Van Zandt by submission via a rear naked choke in the first round. At UFC on Fox 22, she has held the Invicta FC Atomweight title and has faced all of the top atomweight fighters in the world. She is a high-level martial artist whose experience facing high-level fighters will definitely play a big factor in helping her eventually win a UFC title. Number 6. Ronda Rousey is the former UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion and is the number 3 ranked bantamweight in the UFC. She is 30 years old and has 6 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. She last lost to Amanda Nunes by TKO in the first round at UFC 207. At one point in time, she was one of the most dominant champions in the UFC. Whilst as the champion, she had defended her title 6 times, impressively, before suffering her 2 losses. She helped build women's MMA, and I believe if she puts together a winning streak, she will definitely be in line for another title shot. Number 5. Holm is the former UFC Bantamweight champion and is the number 2 ranked bantamweight in the UFC. She is 35 years old and has 3 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. She last lost to Valentina Shevchenko by a unanimous decision at UFC on Fox 20. She has a high-level background in both boxing and kickboxing and has displayed great striking techniques inside the octagon. She has decided to move up to the newly formed UFC featherweight division and will face Germaine de Randamie at UFC 208 for the vacant UFC featherweight title. If she is successful in winning the title, she will become the first female fighter ever to have ever held 2 titles in 2 different weight classes. Number 4. Valentina Shevchenko is the number 1 ranked bantamweight in the UFC. She is 28 years old and has 3 wins and 1 loss in the UFC. She last defeated Juliana Pena by submission via an armbar in the second round at UFC on Fox 23. She has a high-level background in both kickboxing and Muay Thai and has displayed her well-rounded game very well inside the octagon. She will likely face the last person to defeat her, the current UFC bantamweight champion Amanda Nunes, later this year. Number 3. Cris Cyborg Justino is the current Invicta FC Featherweight champion. She is 31 years old and has 2 wins and no losses in the UFC. She last defeated Lena Landsberg by TKO in the second round at UFC Fight Night 95. She was recently flagged by USADA for failing her out-of-competition drug test due to a diuretic in which she used to cut weight for her catchweight fights last year. She may likely be suspended this year, but once she is cleared to return and with the new UFC Women's Featherweight division, it will only be a matter of time before Cris Cyborg can finally call herself a UFC champion. Number 2. Amanda Nunes is the current UFC Bantamweight champion. She is 28 years old and has 7 wins and 1 loss in the UFC. She last defeated Ronda Rousey by TKO in the first round at UFC 207. She has looked like a terrifying force inside the octagon, mauling just about everyone she has faced. She is an aggressive fighter who possesses very heavy hands and has the ability to finish the fight with only a few strikes. I believe we haven't seen the full potential of Amanda Nunes, and I believe she may hold on to the title for a very long time. Number 1. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is the current UFC strawweight champion. She is 29 years old and has 7 wins and no losses in the UFC. She last defeated Karolina Kowalkiewicz by a unanimous decision at UFC 205. She has faced all of the top UFC strawweights and has put together 4 consecutive title defenses. She has completely outclassed her competition using a high-level Muay Thai and has looked just levels beyond her competition. Her overall game is complete and her striking skills are one of the best in the UFC. I believe her constant improvement with each fight will help her hold on to the title for a very long time.